Hello, everybody. We will be getting started in just a minute. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We see some familiar names in our attendee list. Glad to have you guys here. We're going to put some information for our friends who speak French in the chat for accessing interpretation. My apologies that Bethany is here. Bethany, can you give the French announcement?
Yes, of course. Sorry, I am late. Cette réunion est en français et en anglais. Pour écouter en français, cliquez sur Interprétation et sélectionnez Français. Et pour entendre qu'il est français, cliquez sur Couper les sons d'origine. Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Thank you, Bethany. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful Senior Communications Advisor, Suzanne Slattery, here at the Child Health Task Force, to take it away with our social media basics.
Thanks, Sam. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the task force's first bite-sized social skills building session on social media basics. My name is Suzanne Slattery, and like Sam mentioned, I'm a senior communications advisor with JSI and also support the task force secretariat. So like the name suggests, this is going to be a rapid 20-minute lesson that will hopefully impart some basic information that you can put into use immediately. And then for the last 10 minutes, we'll spend some time answering any questions that folks may have. Apologies in advance, I am recovering from a cold, so I might pause every once in a while to take a sip of water. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just to note that when we say basics, we really do mean basics. This session is intended for social media beginners or perhaps those who are interested in starting an account for the first time. So if you are adept at LinkedIn or have been on social media for a while, this will probably be more of a refresher course for you. But of course, you're more than welcome to stay on. And if you have any tips or anecdotes that you'd like to share, you can share that at the end of the presentation. And by the end of the session, we hope that everyone will have a better understanding on the professional benefits of social media, popular platforms that are currently available, basic terminology, different types of content, and a little bit on content strategy, and then finally some practical tips to get started. So before we dive in, I think it's really important to give a nod to social media's growth over the last few decades. It's been around since the mid to late 90s and really began its rise in its users in the early 2000s. But even today in 2024, its usage is still rapidly expanding and evolving. So in 2021, over half of the global population was using social platforms, and it's projected that by 2027, more than 6 billion people will be active users. So while some people still may associate social media with its early intention of socially connecting in a digital space for young people, it's now really important to recognize that it has evolved to become this very valuable mechanism for everyone. We now all have this tool to connect, share, collaborate, and disseminate important information and resources on a global level. And so as social media continues to grow, becoming proficient in using it is going to be a key asset for all of us. Next slide, please. So as a professional tool, specifically, social media can be great for a myriad of reasons. It's given us incredible access to people and organizations, and now we can network and share ideas with people who are on different continents. We're not just relying on conferences and meetings anymore. Some of the other professional benefits include learning about events, and in some cases, organizations are now hosting their events on social platforms, so it's serving as a virtual venue. You can participate in topical discussions happening in different industries. You can gain inspiration by seeing what others in your field are doing or thinking, or seeking out specific thought leaders. You can share your own information and resources. So for example, you can link to articles you've authored or maybe success stories and projects that you're on. You can learn about sector-specific trends and information. And finally, you can also create a personal brand. So if you're looking for new career opportunities or looking to become a thought leader, having a consistent professional online presence can help to build credibility that you can reinforce by sharing content that's aligned with your expertise and interests. Next slide. So let's take a look at some of the current social media landscape. Now, this is clearly not all of the platforms out there right now, but these are some of the more common accounts that organizations tend to have. The first is Facebook, which is owned by Meta, and it's currently the biggest platform with 3 billion users a month. It's very versatile for marketing, building groups, promoting and hosting events, and users can share a range of different kinds of media. Next, we have Instagram, which is also owned by Meta, and that began as a photo sharing app. It's still a visually driven platform, but it's also evolved over the years, and now many companies and marketers are using it as a commerce platform. Users can also share photos and videos and live stream, but sharing links is a bit tricky, and that's something to keep in mind. There are over 2 billion users each month, and generally they tend to skew towards a younger demographic. Next, we have LinkedIn, which you're probably familiar with. It's the largest professional networking platform with over 1 billion users from over 200 countries. It's a great tool for recruitment, researching companies, and it's also conducive to share a range of media, including blogs and newsletters, which you can publish directly onto the platform. Users can also connect with industry peers and join niche interest groups as well. And then finally, we have X, or formerly Twitter, which has gone through some company changes that you've probably heard about in the news. It's also recently experienced a large departure of users, but recent estimates have its monthly users around 611 million, so still quite a bit of people. The platform is good for real-time updates. You may have heard of someone or followed someone who live tweeted an event or maybe followed a developing news story. X is also particularly helpful for following or searching hashtags, which makes it easy to follow specific topics. Users can share images and videos, but there is a character limit within posts, so your content needs to be succinct unless you opt to buy in a premium plan that has more features and allow longer posts. Next slide, please. Now, like all industries and technology, there are some social media specific terms that one should be familiar with. So we're going to cover some of the more basic ones now, starting with direct message, or DM. This is a private way of chatting with other users. You can think of this as akin to texting someone or emailing. The conversation is not public and will remain between the two parties unless, of course, someone shares it. Next, we have feed, which is your main content stream on your homepage. That includes a mix of posts from those you're following and then also usually advertised content. Follower is someone who subscribes to your account, pretty easy. Hashtag, this can denote a keyword or a phrase in a post, and it's a way to tag and organize content. You can search and follow specific hashtags that you're interested in. For example, the task force uses hashtag child survival action on all of its content that we post when it's related to that specific stream of work. So if someone were interested in looking at all of the previous posts with that hashtag, they could type in hashtag child survival action, and then all of the task force posts along with all other organizations that have used it will show up. Impressions are a key metric people use for measuring performance. It's a number of how often your content appears on other users' screens. It doesn't count engagement, so it's not an indication if people are liking or commenting on your post, but it does lend some insight into your reach. Next, we have mentions, which is when you tag someone in your post by putting the @ symbol before their username. And this allows other users to see that person's profile in your post. It links them and then also notifies the person that you've mentioned that you've included them in your post. Reply is when you respond to comments, which form larger conversations. And unlike DMs, this is going to be visible to all who can see the original post. And then finally, repost is when you share someone else's content on your profile, which brings their post to all of your followers. And so it's widening and amplifying the audience. And that's why it's really great if you can get people, especially power users who have a lot of followers, to repost your content because it exposes you to new audiences and potential followers. Next slide, please. So what is content? We talked a lot about content with social media, but what comprises content? Luckily, many things can be turned into content when you post with some finessing. Some examples that we've included, you're probably already familiar with, project and program updates, success stories, events, research, presentations, blog pieces about relevant topics in the news or in your sector. The great thing about having so many options is that you don't have to spend a lot of time creating new content to post from scratch. You can use what you have and repurpose it across platforms. And when you do share content, you should make sure to invite engagement on it. So ask questions to spark a dialogue, respond to comments, encourage people to share your post, or link people to your post and ask for their thoughts. Next slide, please. So to put this as a visual, here we have a basic example of repurposing content. So let's say your report was recently published. Your report can now be the foundation for content for different posts across platforms. But you would also want to tailor the content to suit each platform while keeping your message consistent. So for example, platforms that can host visuals like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, you could create an infographic or maybe use an existing graphic from the report as a visual, and that's a way to draw users in. You could also use your report as a basis to write a brief update that gives some context to the work or shares its significance, or maybe has a call to action, and you can post that to LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. You could also write a short blog or thought piece that expands on a key takeaway or a dimension of the report. And these longer form pieces, you can directly post on LinkedIn's blog feature. So basically, the meat of your post is always the report, but by repurposing, you're simply reworking how it's packaged for different platforms and audiences. So you're not posting the exact same message across all of your accounts. Next slide, please. So some general tips to get started. The first is to know your purpose. Why are you interested in using social media for professional context? Do you have a specific goal? Are you looking to be an active user, or maybe you're looking to be more observational and monitor the platform for trends and news? Understand what your motivation is, and then use that as your guide for your social media activity. Now, if you're looking to achieve more specific goals through social media, you can always use Forrester Research's POST method, which is helpful to form the foundations of a social media strategy. So POST stands for people, which is who are you looking to reach? Who is your primary audience? Where can they be found online? You don't want to be on Twitter if the people you're interested in connecting with are all on LinkedIn. Next, objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to build followers? Are you creating engagement? Are you developing community, raising funds, creating a call to action? S is for strategy. What will success look like? How will you accomplish this? And then T is for technology. Based on the previous questions, what tools best support your objectives and your audience's needs? Is it a blog? Is it a discussion, a video tutorial, or maybe a combination of tactics? So once you've gone through the post considerations, you'll have the necessary elements that you can turn into a good plan that will drive your strategy forward. Now, so for some other general tips, please do check your security preferences. We are in a online world now where cybersecurity is an actual thing. So since you're putting yourself out there in the world, please make sure you check your security settings and set up your preferences to match with what you're comfortable with. So each platform has options for privacy and visibility, so do take the time to go through them. There is a trade-off for this. Having a more public profile will expose you to more people, but it also does come at a higher risk. So that's just something to think about. Next is to be active and check in at least once a day. Simply signing up for an account and posting once every few months won't get you much traction if you're looking to have any sort of reach or growth. The algorithm on these platforms, which determines where and when your posts are seen, does tend to favor active users. So there are people who are posting regularly, commenting, and engaging with other users, and so their content tends to be seen more often, and that's just something to keep in mind. Next, prioritize the platforms that work best for you. You do not need to be on all the platforms all the time. If TikTok is not your thing, then you do not need to create a TikTok account. Curating a social media profile takes time, so figure out what your preferences are, where the people you want to connect are, and the types of content you like to share. It's better to have 1 to 2 well-maintained accounts than 5 neglected accounts. Also, they say variety is the spice of life, and that goes the same with content. So be sure to use different types. You want to mix up your posts, share reports, resources, news, calls to action, images, videos. It's easier for people to stay engaged when you're not posting very similar things in succession. There are a lot of different recommendations out there on the ratios of what is the ideal mix of resharing content versus posting your own. And we're not going to get into that, but most guidelines suggest that a good chunk, around 60% of your content, should be reshared content. So again, that's posts other people have shared that you're bringing into your profile and sharing with your audience. Now, things are always changing, so I encourage you to play around and find out what works for you. But a good takeaway is just to remember that sharing interesting and useful content from others is a good trick. Next, if you need inspiration, look at users that you admire and see what types of things they're posting and how they're engaging with their followers, and borrow some of their tactics. Next slide. Okay, so we've reached the question and answer portion. We want to open it up. If you have any questions, or again, if you want to share any tips or insights, please feel free to type them in the chat box. Any questions?
Suzanne, hi, it's Malia. I'm just going to
Hi.
come off mute because I have a
Sure.
question, and thank you so much for this presentation, which is helpful. I feel like I'm one of those people that has some accounts that, I might not post to that often. But I do have a specific question because as you were talking, I was thinking that, LinkedIn can really be used to highlight a bunch of different things. And I've tried to repost the task force's, media blasts. But for instance, there was just a webinar on the Health Market Analyzer, which is a great new tool that Frontier Health Markets has produced with Avenir. And it really helps to, bring DHS data to your fingertips so you can really see, patterns in seeking care for sick children in both the public and the private sectors. So if I want to share this, right, because there were very few people, unfortunately, that joined the task force webinar, what would be the best, what do you think would be the best way? I mean, should I create new content that talks about what this is? would it be helpful to kind of take, the webinar announcement and even though it's done, repost it? I guess I'm just wondering, if you have advice because I do feel like it's such a valuable tool and we really want to get the message out there and we're looking at different opportunities. But if social media is one of them, then what's the best way of sharing on this topic? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So LinkedIn, if you might notice, if you look at your feed, it's not chronological. So
Yeah.
they will sometimes share things that happened 3 weeks ago. And
Uh-huh.
so sharing like an old task force post that maybe first announced the webinar, that's totally fine. Because at the very
Huh.
bottom, you
Mhm.
see you'll have the options to either repost and that'll just bring the post onto your page,
Uh-huh.
or you can repost with thoughts. And so I'd
Mhm.
recommend you repost with thoughts and
Okay.
then add in, your own commentary, or if there's
Right.
other resources that you would like to share that is relevant, to add those
Okay.
in too. And then that helps the
Mhm.
task force because you're
Yeah.
exposing it to your followers.
Mhm.
And then also, you're directly linking to the original source. So
Mhm. Okay. Well,
I
I'm
recommend, yeah.
yeah, thanks. Well, I'm not very active, right? So, but I should probably be more active. So if I'm understanding you correctly, then I would go to the task force LinkedIn page and then find that post about the market analyzer webinar and then
Mhm.
basically repost it as a thought on my own LinkedIn page and I could add comments. Is that correct?
Yes, so you would reshare with comments, and
Okay.
then you can add in, whatever you'd like to say, and then
Mhm.
that would
Okay.
have our post and then also your thoughts.
Okay, great. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or maybe comments or insights people would like to share? Don't be shy.
Hi, Suzanne. Another question that we have for you is when you're trying to build a social media presence for the first time, could you give a good kind of starter pack almost of maybe the best place to start and the type of content that would be great to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would recommend going back to the post method. I don't know if we can maybe go back a few slides that has, yeah. So I think if you're thinking about starting social media for the first time, you really want to think through, again, the post. What people are you trying to connect with? What are your objectives? Are you looking to uh, amplify a specific event, or are you looking to just connect? Know why, the why of starting social media, and then think of sort of what kind of content and plan that you could have, and then from there, that will kind of inform which platforms you should start with. So, LinkedIn versus uh, Instagram versus Facebook, and then dedicate your time to starting at those places, and then you can always expand later on. And again, for content, everything pretty much can be content. So look at what you have, or maybe what your organization has, and then you can think of ways that you can share that with your audience. All right, we have a few minutes left. If there's any other questions. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is the last slide. And then this is just a reminder that the task force is on LinkedIn and on X, so please feel free to follow us if you would like. And then if you have questions too that come up later, or if you have any feedback on this session, because again, this is the first time that we are doing sort of a micro lesson, please feel free to email us, and our email listed there. And I will pause for a couple minutes if there's any other questions. If not, we can wrap this session up.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was really helpful and great. And thank you to everybody for joining. Yes, if there are any more questions, we have another 1 or 2 minutes, so please feel free to ask. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we will share the presentation and the slides. Thank you, everybody.